This is Wretched Radio with Todd Friel.
Yeah, before we get to those emails,
here we go.
This is Wretched Radio. During the break, Tony asking, when will we talk about the Kathy Griffin story? You recall she held up a bloody head of the president. Okay, it's a whatever it was, paper mache head with tomato sauce on top of it. Not in the best of taste. She got a shellacking for it. She decided to recant. Well, we decided, okay, we'll believe her. She said she's sorry because it is not our job to determine the sincerity of an apology. That goes for Kathy Griffin. That goes for your spouse and for your children. If somebody says, I'm sorry, even if it's like, I'm sorry, we accept it. It's between them and God. That is not our department. It is not our job description. We'd like more. Of course we would. But we accept it on its face for what it is. We did that with Kathy Griffin. Well, apparently she's not so sorry after all.
I'm no longer sorry. The whole thing got so blown out of proportion, and I lost everybody. Like, I had Chelsea Clinton tweeting against me. I had friends.
I love that.
Deborah Messing from Will and Grace tweeting against me. I mean, I lost everybody.
Well, she's on tour now in Australia, and I suspect she'll be continuing to make a living with her humor. Kathy Griffin no longer sorry, so now what do? Okay. As I recall, she didn't sin against me. That's kind of what I remember. So I don't know that I need to forgive Kathy Griffin for anything. Nevertheless, now I look at it and go, okay, then there is a rift in our relationship. That is what happens when you have sin between two parties. Unless some sort of transaction takes place, there's going to be a rift that requires healing. And so to have a sin transaction take place, I am sorry, will you forgive me? Yes, I will. That is when it can start to heal and you can come together again. Kathy Griffin, well, she's just wrecked my relationship with her again. So now I don't have much of a relationship with Kathy Griffin as if I ever did. Are you happy now that we've talked about Kathy Griffin?
You know, I couldn't be giddier.
Yeah, I suspect, maybe, just maybe, if some people saw that interview in an Australian morning show, they, if they've got a memory like an elephant, might say, so Friel, did you goof up when you said that you think that we Christians should just say, okay, you don't owe me an apology, but you gave one, so we say forgiven. Do you regret that? No. She said she was sorry. What are you supposed to do with it? You don't wait. That's not how it works. Remember, when Jesus answered the question, how often should I forgive my brother? 7 times? 70 times 7. Okay, there's no time that could take. If your brother sins against you 490 times a day, there's no time to see if they really, really meant it. They say sorry, you say forgiven. So I don't know, because that is the pattern, whether it is Kathy Griffin or somebody that you love. And as long as we're talking about really popular celebrities, okay, I honestly was not going to share this because I just went, yawn, whatever. But then I actually watched it. This was something. Do you recall a few weeks ago, James Franco? I think he's dating Kathy Griffin. I could be wrong. I get my celebrities very confused. He's an actor, and James Franco, he's got some sort of YouTube show, and he co-hosts it with some fellow. They were interviewing a Princeton professor, a younger woman. She looked like she was early 30s. And she was offering an explanation for why she believes that abortion should be totally legal. And I said, well, James Franco's face, we all saw the still pictures. He's like, what? Kind of like a screwball face, like, what are you saying? And we just let it go at that. Well, then I actually listened to it. You have got to hear this.
Guessing we're going to talk about abortion and early stage abortion.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Go.
Let's talk about it.
All right, so in some of my work, I defend a liberal position about early abortion. So I defend the view that there's nothing morally bad about early abortion.
Okay.
So a lot of people think, well, it's permissible to have an abortion, but something bad happens when the fetus dies. And I think if a fetus hasn't ever been conscious, it hasn't ever had any experiences, and we abort it at that stage, that actually nothing morally bad happens.
I see. So if the baby has never been morally conscious, you can go ahead and kill it. So if you happen to have a loved one in a hospital who is, say, unconscious or sleeping, apparently we can kill. That wasn't the point of this. Same old, same old. But just listen to how this woman, I'm telling you, this is, I'm trying to think who talks in circles and says a lot of words but never says anything. Whoever that is that I'm thinking of is related to this woman.
This view might seem unattractive because it might seem that it dictates a cold attitude towards all early fetuses. But what I think is that actually, among early fetuses, there are two very different kinds of beings. So, James, when you were an early fetus, and Elliot, when you were an early fetus, all of us, I think that we already did have moral status then. But we had moral status in virtue of our futures, in virtue of the fact that we were the beginning stages of persons. But some early fetuses will die early in pregnancy, either due to abortion or miscarriage. And in my view, that's a very different kind of entity. That's something that doesn't have a future as a person, and it doesn't have moral status.
Okay.
Wow.
I've thought this through, so I think I kind of know what she was saying. Because those guys lived, and the three of them are apparently successful, then they had moral standing. Those who don't accomplish apparently what they accomplish don't have moral standing. Madam, where is that line exactly? I kind of like to know, because if somebody doesn't meet that standard when they're like 20 or 30, can we kill them then? Hold on. It gets worse.
So there's a real question of how could we know? Well, often we do know. So often if we know that a woman is planning to get an abortion and we know that abortion is available to her, then we know that that fetus is going to die, that it's not a kind of thing like the fetuses that became us. It's not something with moral status on my view.
Wow.
Often we have
Hello,
reason
eugenics.
to believe that a fetus is the beginning stage of a person. So if we know that that a woman is planning to continue her pregnancy, then we have good reason to think that her fetus is something with moral status, something with this future as a person.
Now you're saying this is starting to get a little muddy here. Hold on.
So it might look like, on my view, abortion is permissible because you had the abortion. But that abortion wouldn't have been permissible if you didn't have the abortion. Well, that's not quite that's not quite the view for, I think, two different reasons. So one reason is that you have moral status, and in my view, back when you were an early fetus, you had moral status.
Okay.
But it's not that aborting you would have been wrong, because if your mother had chosen to abort her pregnancy, then it wouldn't have been the case that you would have had moral status, because you would have died as an early fetus. So she would have been aborting something that didn't have moral status.
I see.
So it's not, so my view isn't that if you do abort, abortion is okay, but if you don't abort, abortion would have been wrong. But what it turns out is that it's a contingent matter that you have moral status. You actually have moral status, but you might not have counted morally at all. If you had been aborted, you would have existed, but you just would have had this really very short existence in which you wouldn't have mattered morally. So it might look...
That was fancier footwork than Floyd Mayweather. Here's what she just said. Because you're successful, James, you had value as a fetus. But if you'd been aborted, you would have never actually attained that value, so it's okay to abort you. See what she just did right there? The circle kind of went unbroken. She concluded.
Another thing
boy.
that you were bringing up was the idea that on my view, in aborting, we're taking away the moral status.
Yeah, right.
That the fetus would have had moral status, but then by aborting, we take it away. And I think that's the wrong way to look at it.
Okay.
I think the right way to look at it is that just given the current state of the fetus, it's not having any experiences, there's nothing about its current state that would make it a member of the moral community. It's derivative of its future that it gets to have moral status. So it's really that the future endows moral status on it. And if we allow it to have this future, then we're allowing it to be the kind of thing that now would have moral status. So in aborting it, I don't think you're depriving it of something that it independently has.
I see. That is the brilliant mind of a Princeton professor. Got that? It's the same old utilitarian view. As long as you can contribute, then we'll keep you. If you don't, we won't. What is that line? What is that standard? What a mess. Eugenics, it is alive and well. A pagan pontificating on morality. Sort of like the pagans in Houston that are claiming that the floods happened because of the sin against Mother Nature, and Mother Nature is paying them back because of the global warming business. Isn't that funny? They believe that Mother Nature is justified in pouring out her wrath by flooding a large area for their sins against her. But the thought of God the Father destroying the global world with a global flood because of their sins against him. Foolishness! Don't let anybody kid you. Pagans are as religious as anybody else. It's just aimed in the wrong direction. And wow, is it ever a moral mess. This, Tony, quit interrupting. This is Wretched Radio.
Thanks for listening to the Wretched segment du jour. If you'd like more Wretched, you can listen to the most current stream for free at wretched.tv/listen, or you can become a club member and listen to our entire archive. Wretched, reaching the lost, equipping the saints, and strengthening the local church.